So mindfulness practice. So when we talk about what it is, right? Mindfulness is the practice of purposely focusing your attention on the present moment and accepting it without judgment. It's really a way of being more than a thing to do that involves bringing awareness to the unfolding of your present experience, moment to moment, with openness, acceptance, and curiosity. For example, most of you walked in here and had never heard of mindfulness before, right? Hopefully you were curious about what it was going to be, right? So it's kind of that openness to experience, whatever the experience is, right? Most of us spend most of our lives either in the past, which is over, right, or the future, which hadn't happened yet. But our minds really do that all the time, right? Back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. The only trouble with that is we never can experience the present moment when we're in the past or the future, right? So this is what mindfulness teaches us, is how to be here now, so to speak, right? So if I asked you, where do you spend most of your time? There's no right answer for these things, by the way. Do you spend most of your time in the past or most of your time in the future? Where do you live? What do you think?
Now.
You live in the now. Good for you. All right, here's a now person. How about other people? Flip-flop. That's what most people say, right? So mindfulness really isn't a set of techniques to kind of escape unpleasant feelings, right? It's not a relaxation exercise or really a concrete goal. It's an approach to life that can help you respond more skillfully even when challenges occur. Certainly everybody in this room, I'm taking it, had some pretty serious physical challenges, right? Or are having challenges, right? Right. So it involves the process of becoming more aware and accepting towards all of your experiences, including the unpleasant ones, right? So let's think about that for a moment. When we have any kind of unpleasant experience, what do we generally do? Get depressed, get angry, right? And try to run as fast as we can away from it, right? How's that work for us? Doesn't work, does it? Actually, the harder we run, usually, the more difficult it is for us, right? So particularly when we're going through a medical illness of some type, right? When we are in denial or try to get away from what's happening, usually that just makes things a lot worse for us, right? Okay. People ask a lot, is it scientific or is it religious? Because we talk a lot about meditation. And it is scientific and it is not religious, right? But it is being examined scientifically and found to be a key element in happiness. And we'll talk a little further along about the work that the studies they've done with mindfulness with people with various heart conditions. It's pretty amazing, actually, the effects. It is based on a Buddhist practice called Vipassana, which really means insight, right? But it's practiced by all kinds of people, all kinds of backgrounds. It's not a Buddhist practice, right? But meditation basically came from the Buddhist tradition, right? Some key points. Practicing mindfulness improves both mental and physical health, right? And we could all use that. We could all benefit by feeling better emotionally, thinking in a way that's more helpful, and certainly by feeling better physically, right? But it involves both concentration, which is really a form of meditation, and acceptance, paying attention to thoughts, emotions, and sensations without judgment. Think about this for a moment. It is 9:35. Most of us have been up since, what, 6, 7, right? 5 in some cases, early riser. Think about how many thoughts you've had since you woke up this morning, right? Thousands and thousands, right? Because we're always having thoughts. Think about how many emotions you've had since you woke up, right? Same thing, thousands, right? So the thought you had at 7:15 this morning, where is it now? Nobody knows. Gone. Stored. It said stored. Some people say that. But the point is, right, is that thoughts are constantly coming and going, constantly. So are emotions. So are physical sensations, right? When there's an unpleasant physical sensation, usually it doesn't last, right? Even with chronic pain, people notice that it kind of increases or decreases over a given time, right? But when we believe that thoughts and emotions and physical sensations are these solid things, and when we identify with them, right, that's the problem, right? Because they're always coming and going, constantly, right? But it does take practice to become comfortable with mindfulness, because it trains the mind to be less reactive and more stable, helps develop patience and acceptance, and builds and deepens the mind's strength and concentration. So a really good way to look at mindfulness is that it is a practice in mind training, right? It's a way to learn how to let go of thoughts that are unpleasant for us, or just to watch them come and go, and to not kind of grab onto them, right? A meditation teacher of mine was really helpful once, because I was, complaining about these thoughts that are so unpleasant, or these emotions that are so unpleasant. And she said to me, the problem is not that we have unpleasant thoughts of emotions, right? Everybody does. The problem is when we grab onto it and wear it like a coat all day. Isn't that a great way of looking at it, right? Yeah. So it's only when we attach to those unpleasant experiences and kind of they become us, right? But they're not really us, because they come and go all the time, right? Any thoughts about this so far? This is more of a discussion than just a lecture. So what do you think about this concept of thoughts coming and going, emotions coming and going? What do you think? I know it's early, but... Yes, sir. Phil.
When I have one thought coming, and I try to forget that one, I have like 20 more coming.
Yes.
My family, everything.
Exactly, because they never stop, do they? They're always coming and going, right? A lot of people, especially in the therapy field, there's a type of practice called cognitive therapy, right? And the idea there is if there's an unpleasant thought, to kind of catch it and change it to a pleasant one. Mindfulness isn't that, right? Mindfulness isn't about trying to change your thoughts or feelings. It's about realizing they're impermanent. They're always coming and going, right? So that's a difference. Other thoughts about this? How about this reactivity thing? That's important, right? If you think about most of us, our typical day, we're very reactive people, right? When something occurs we don't like, we react to it, generally, right? Which causes a lot of problems in relationships, doesn't it? When we're kind of reacting to everything all the time. So what mindfulness teaches us to do is put a space between what occurs and what our reaction is to it, right? Just a little space, right? There's another term in psychology called hot reactors, right? See if you identify with this. A lot of us do. So the hot reactor goes through their day reacting to everything quickly, right? So if something upsets them, they get really upset, right? If something is pleasant, they feel really pleasant about it. So they react to whatever's occurring, right, pretty much in an intense kind of way, right? I see some smiles. Is that something you're familiar with? Most people will say, yeah, that's my husband or wife, right? Right. Yes, but we do. We tend to be, we're kind of trained in our culture, actually, to be hot reactors, right? The only trouble with that is, what does that do to us physiologically?
It's tiring.
It's tiring. It's exhausting. It's not right. It's exhausting to be constantly reacting to everything. Physiologically, what does it do to us? What do you think? If we're in that constant state of psychological arousal, that reactivity state, let's hear from the medical. What do you think? What does that do to us?
Raising blood pressure, heart
blood
rate,
pressure,
all
exactly.
those vitals that would like to be low.
Exactly, yeah. So if we're in that constant reactive state, our blood pressure is going to be higher, our pulse rate is going to be higher. There's all kind of things happening, right? And we think we don't have any kind of control over that, but we do, right? Anybody else? Yes.
So the opposite of that, if you didn't react and somebody thinks you don't care.
They could, right? The part of mindfulness is not being so worried about what other people think. See, that's even better, right? But the idea there is, I mean, you want to react if it's appropriate, right? But you don't want to just go around just reacting all the time, right? You know anybody in your life that's really an angry person? They're just always angry about something, right? That's kind of the hot reactor. Not anybody here, of course, but somebody in your life you might know, right, is like that. So mindfulness practice really does train our minds to kind of slow down, right, to choose our reactions to things, to see thoughts and emotions coming and going without being overly attached to them, right? Some types of mindfulness practice. These are the three basic types. There's both formal and informal practices in mindfulness, right? The formal practice has more to do with different types of meditations, right? And there are really three types. There's concentration practice, there's grounding practice, and there's compassion practice. Interestingly, they have found that people who exhibit a high degree of compassion, right, physiologically feel better, right? And I imagine most people in here are compassionate people, right? You wouldn't be here probably, right? But the more we develop compassion, the better we are physically. It improves our health. Isn't that an amazing thing, right? Sarah? Oh, if we care about people, right, or animals, or whoever, if we show compassion, caring, right, that if we are that kind of person, that our physical health is better than somebody who generally doesn't practice compassion. Isn't that neat to see, right? So a lot of what we can do with our health is actually dependent on how we approach things, right? If we approach things compassionately versus angrily, right? So concentration practice, that's an important one. See y'all later. If you think about the mind again, remember it's always going everywhere, right? It always is, right? You remember, we've probably all been to the zoo, or at least seen the little spider monkeys with the long tails, right? You've seen those little monkeys? I used to have two of those as a kid. They were so cute. But, so notice what those little monkeys do. If you've been to the zoo, they're up in the trees. What are they constantly doing? Moving. They don't slow down, don't they? And they swing and jump from one branch to the next, and they're constantly chattering, right? That's kind of how our mind is, right? They call it the monkey mind. It's always chattering, always going, right? Concentration practice helps us to begin to slow the mind down in some ways, right? And there's piles of different types of things concentration involves in. Has anybody in here ever done any kind of meditation at all?
Yes.
You have, okay. If you think about concentration practice, with some of the meditation like focusing on one thing, maybe a word over and over, or counting, right? Things like that. So it's focusing on one thing. Although the mind's still going to go all over the place, you bring it back to the one thing, right? Somebody explained concentration practice in a really good way. It's like training a puppy, right? So if you think about, if you've got a puppy, I guess cats do this too, I'm not a cat person, but if you think about puppies, if you've had a new puppy, right? So you want it to learn, you want to house train it, right? So what do you do with the puppy? You get a pee pad, right? Put it down, grab the puppy, set him on the pee pad, wait, and of course, what does he do? He or she runs off and pees in the corner, right? So what do? You pick up the puppy, you bring it back to the pad again, you wait, and they run off in that corner and pee. You do it over and over, right? You keep bringing them back to the pee pad, right? And eventually, hopefully, what happens? Right? They learn to pee where they're supposed to. So our mind is kind of like that, right? We want to always bring our minds back to the pee pad, basically, right? So the mind is always like that puppy going off here and there, over there. And the concentration practice is just the practice of bringing the mind back over and over and over again, right? So that's concentration practice. Grounding practice is really very relaxing. It's generally when we use like guided imagery, right? And two of the best that I know of is called the mountain meditation. We've done this in our groups across the street, where you imagine yourself to be a mountain, right? And even though all the weather changes on the mountain, like our lives always changing, right? We're still grounded as the mountain, right? Another is the lake, and if we have time, we'll do a little bit of that. And then compassion practice, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is you're not compassionate at all, which I'm sure nobody in here is that. And 10 is you're very compassionate. Where would you rate yourself? 1 to 10. 7, so pretty highly compassionate. How about other people? What do you think?
8.
8, even higher, right? 7. So most people are very compassionate people, right? In your life, how do you practice that? How do you practice compassion?
I have kids, football and baseball.
Absolutely, right. That's a very compassionate practice. How about other people?
No, I'm a mentor for kids, so
Great,
I do as well.
great, right. So when we're in that place of caring and we're compassionate, don't we feel better? And doesn't it help us physically, right? Yeah. I've heard people in chronic pain that say when they focus on someone else's problem, their pain lessens. Isn't that something? Right? So those are the 3 basic types of mindfulness practice, the formal kind, right? Here's a good saying here. I can't worry about that now. I'm worrying about something else, right? So we're always generally, our untrained mind is always in that worrying state, all right? Now think about worrying. Worrying generally isn't based on the past, right? It's based on the future. It's what we think is going to happen, right? And unfortunately, we do this thing called negativity bias, which means that all kind of things could happen in the future. Great things, right? We don't focus on those, right? We focus on the things that could go wrong, right? None of which are, because it's all the future. It hadn't occurred yet, right? If you look, if you think about your life, what is it you worry about, right? Good, great, he doesn't. He's going to be our poster boy for this class. Right? How about other people? What do you worry about?
Money.
Money. How about other people?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, right. Or even today, right? And most of us that have had physical challenges, what do we worry about with that?
Health. Future health.
Future health, right? Oh my God, what's going to go wrong? How bad is it going to be? What's blah, 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 right? So we run this, what we call running the story in our heads about how bad things could be, right? The trouble with that is that our bodies, this is not good to say to a physical therapist person, but our bodies are not very smart, right? That the body basically believes whatever the mind tells it, right? So if you're sitting here and everything's fine here, there's nothing going on terribly, right? But you're sitting here imagining something that could go bad tomorrow, right? Your body doesn't know the difference in today and tomorrow, right? The body is going to experience wherever your mind is, right? So if you're sitting here worried about how you're going to pay a bill on Friday, right, and it's Tuesday, your body is going to be worried now, and it's going to have the physiological reactions, blood pressure, blah, 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 right? Another thing interesting about the body is it doesn't listen to us in words. In other words, you could say to yourself, okay, relax, right? Doesn't do a lot of good, right? The body basically listens to our mind through images, right? So if you imagine yourself relaxing on a beach, there's much more possibility your body is going to be relaxed than if you just tell yourself, I'm on a beach and I'm relaxed. It's not going to work that way, right? So the body basically works through images, not through words. So that's helpful to see too. So a couple of concepts here, and again, feel free to throw your own comments in there. Some basic concept of mindfulness. All phenomena are impermanent. Everything you see, feel, touch, taste, and experience comes and goes. Even the things you wish were permanent aren't, right? So as long as we're on this planet, right? Everything that is going to change, everything's going to come and go, right? It's only when we hold on to and cling to things and say, no, it should be permanent, but it's not, right? I mean, there was a time, for most of us, when we were more physically healthy, right? There was a time when we were younger, right? All that changes, right? We can't, there's constant change. And what most of us do is we resist this concept of impermanence. We fight that, right? Oh no, it shouldn't be this, it shouldn't be that. Well, it is, right? So the more you ever, in the 12-step programs, they have a great saying, what you resist persists, right? So the more we fight against what is, the worse it is for us, right? So that's part of what mindfulness teaches. And that the present moment, in actuality, is all that actually does exist, right? It's very hard to exist in the future when it isn't even happening, right? And the past really is over. Okay? Most of us, when I asked that question earlier, where do you spend most of your time? Most people say they spend most of their time in the past, right? Going over the things they should have done differently, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? Which makes us depressed and various things, right? If you think about the past, it's simply a set of thoughts, emotions, and associations that you continue to think and re-experience repeatedly, right? The only way that we have the past is when we go to the past and think about it over and over again, right? Because it isn't happening now, it's over, right? Future hasn't occurred. And we talked about people vacillating back and forth. Another good one. I want to learn to live in the moment, just not this moment, some other moment, like a moment at the beach, right? So we want the good moments, and we don't want the moments that aren't good. But the truth is, it's a combo, right? We can't get through this life without having moments that are unpleasant, right? So we kind of go with the flow, as they say, right? Rather than resisting. And it's really examining our experience rather than resisting it, to be present with it. An interesting concept about pain was as pain does not equal suffering. So if we think about our lives and think about pain using this definition, pain is either not getting what we want or getting what we don't want, right? So think about those two categories and think about the quote pain in your life. Isn't it either getting what you don't want or not getting what you do want? Or sometimes both together. Think about anything. Pick anything that's been a struggle for you, a painful thing. What is it? Pick something. Give me an example.
A heart attack.
A heart attack, yes. So, is that getting what you don't want?
Right.
Right. And it's certainly not getting what we do want because we want health, right? Try another one. Pick anything. You'll see that they all fall into these categories. Everything. Exercise is a pain thing. Well, think about that one. Is that not getting what we want or getting what we don't want, right?
Getting what doesn't work. More time.
Right. So pain pretty much falls into those categories. And that's very different than suffering, right? So suffering, so we can't get through this life, obviously, right, without pain. We're gonna get things we don't want to happen to us, and we're gonna get lots of things that we're not gonna get lots of things we do want, right, because that's how life is. That's just reality, right? The suffering we do to ourselves. It's the story we tell ourselves about the pain, right? So let's say 3 years ago, somebody stepped on my toe, right? 3 years ago, that was a painful experience. My toe hurt. Now, 3 years later, I'm going around saying, that ass, I can't believe what they did. They stepped on my toe. They're so, 3 years later, I'm still doing that in my head. I'm the one causing my own suffering, right? The pain is long gone. Now, that was a simple example, but you can use pretty much any example, right? Anything that happened in the past that was unpleasant is a pain. The question is, do you still suffer in your own head? Do you run the story? Oh, look how terrible it is. Look what they did to me, or whatever it is, right? You can always tell. You remember that character, what movie was it? Eeyore? Remember Eeyore, the donkey? What was that in? Anybody know?
Winnie the Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh, right. Remember Eeyore with the sad ears, and Eeyore's always talking about how terrible things are. Nothing's ever going to get better. That's Eeyore, right? That's the suffering story, right? So it's the story we run in our own heads, which make us miserable, and makes the people around us miserable too, by the way, when we're running those stories, right? And that we can look at. We can mindfully look at and say, what suffering story am I running, right? And what good does it do me, right? So pain and suffering. Talked about compassion. And what I think is really helpful, we're, in our culture particularly, we're really big on things being good and bad, right and wrong, right? Everything's in a little box, right? Kind of black and white thinking, basically. When you decide that something you did was right or wrong or good or bad, you're basically judging yourself, right? And other people too, if it's something they did, right? Skillful and unskillful isn't really a judgment, right? If I did something that was unskillful, I can simply learn how to do it skillfully, right? So it's a very different mindset. Rather than considering everything as good, bad, right, or wrong, look at it as skillful or unskillful. And if you start thinking that way about yourself and other people, you're much less judgmental towards yourself and therefore towards other people. Right? So if you do, and hopefully you don't, but let's say with the cardiac issues people have here, more than likely somewhere along the way you're thinking, I did something bad, right? I did something wrong. I should have done it different, blah, 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 right? Right? So that's a lot of judgment. Right? What if you looked at it as skillful and unskillful? So I did some things in the past that were unskillful, that caused some physical problems or were part of that. So now I'm learning how to be skillful so it doesn't happen again. Notice the difference just in our minds, right? So that's important. The other piece of mindfulness is taking responsibility for our experience, which again means, really you're the only person in your head, right? That only you think what you think and feel what you feel, right? So let's talk a little bit about mindfulness and physical illness. Research on mindfulness-based interventions called MBIs for treating symptoms of a wide range of medical conditions has proliferated in recent decades. Mindfulness is purposely cultivated in a range, right? A bulk of research looked at diagnoses of cancer, pain conditions, chronic pain, lower back pain, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, cardiovascular disease. A lot of study has been done on mindfulness practice for people with cardiovascular disease, as well as HIV, diabetes, et cetera, et cetera. And irritable bowel syndrome. Mindfulness practice really helps people with IBS, irritable bowel. So let's see if this is your experience. Look at what happens when diagnosed with a physical health condition. What do we feel usually first? A loss of control, right? Look what happened to me, right? So a loss of control, lack of certainty. Oh my God, what's going to happen now, right? Constant change. Many people describe illness as an emotional roller coaster. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Right? Right? People respond to these challenges in a variety of ways. Some people try to hold on tighter, right? They use the skills of problem solving that have served them well in other domains. They search the internet for all the available information. Anybody do that one? Get on the internet and find out everything you ever didn't want to know, right? Right? And half of it's not accurate anyway, right? Right. Go to many specialists, second, third, fourth, and 25th opinions, right? While these actions can be beneficial, they don't address the underlying issue of loss causing the feelings of anxiety, fear, worry, and sadness. Because bottom line, it's a loss, right? It's getting something you don't want. Remember, it's a pain, right? No matter the prognosis, there is inevitably a sense of loss, and usually accompanied by anger, right? And one is diagnosed with a physical medical condition. There may be feelings of shame or guilt or self-blame, especially if it has to do with lifestyle changes, oh my God, I smoked, or whatever it was, right? This is without even considering the actual physical symptoms people are dealing with: pain, sleeplessness, weakness, discomfort, loss of functional abilities. So all that's happening, right? Sound familiar? Right? Yeah. But what can mindfulness do to help kind of balance that experience out? What we do see with mindfulness practice is an improvement in it's called emotional regulation, right? Rather than kind of being all over the place emotionally, right? Mindfulness practice teaches us how to regulate emotions. So we still accept, if we're angry or if we're sad or whatever, but it doesn't become all of us, right? It's an emotion that comes and goes. Some examples of some research which I think are helpful. This particular one looked at 208 patients with chronic heart failure, right? And taught them mindfulness-based interventions consisting of mindfulness meditation, coping skills, and group discussion. Patients in these particular studies showed a greater decrease in anxiety, depression, and cardiac symptoms. It's not just your emotions, right? It's actually physically that people did better physically with cardiac symptoms when they were practicing mindfulness. So that was an important study, right? And we can guarantee you that mindfulness practice can help you reduce blood pressure and pulse rate. And that can happen in a moment, actually. It doesn't take long when you practice this, right? So we want to talk about some resources real quickly, and then we want to do a few more things. In your packet, there's a really good list of books, articles, etc., that you could take a look at. There's some really good workbooks as well. Do what?
Oh, page 10.
Oh, page 10. Thank you. Are they numbered? Oh, cool. That's great. I didn't know that. So there's some really good mindfulness workbooks that you can buy and practice with as well. That's really helpful. One's for depression, one's for chronic pain, and just some really good things there. I want to back up 1 second now. So we talked a lot about what mindfulness is. I'd just like to get your opinions so far about what you've heard. Does it sound like something that would be helpful to you? Does it sound like a pile? I mean, what is it?
Something to think about.
Something to think about, yeah, absolutely. How about other people? You may be already practicing it and didn't know what it was called, right? Right? Yeah. That's usually a good thing to recognize, that you're doing these things without knowing it had a name specifically, right? How about other people? Do you see different things we've talked about that you think, wow, that's really something I could really work on? What do you think?
Yeah, and music a lot of times does a lot of relaxation of the mind.
Absolutely. Music is a great one. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the meditation doesn't have to be some formal thing, although that's really helpful as a way of training the mind. It can be informal, right? And certainly listening to music is one, right? Anybody do a good amount of walking now? Right. Walking meditation is a wonderful thing. Something to consider. I don't know how you do it. Most of us, when we take a walk, right, aren't actually there in the walk. We're thinking about something somebody said, what I got to do when I get back home, right? Right? So again, the mind, remember the initial picture of the person walking their dog? Our mind is all caught up in something else. So we're not really in that walk presently. But there's a meditation, it's called walking meditation, right? And what you do in walking meditation is you focus on the immediate moment of the walk, right? So one way to do that is actually to count footsteps, right, slowly. Another is to stop and name the things that you see along the way. There's a yellow flower, there's a bird, whatever it is. Keeps you right in the present moment, right? Because although walking generally is good for you physically, it's not that great for you mentally if you're stuck in something else that should be happening tomorrow, right? So that's a great one, and you said music. Anybody seen the adult coloring books at all? Those are great, right? That's another kind of mindfulness practice. They're just wonderful. They have these, giant mandalas or pictures that people can color, right? What else do you do to be mindful? What else do you do to kind of reduce stress at this point in your life? Yes, sir.
Cooking and baking.
Cooking and baking can be really helpful if you like cooking and baking. Yes, that's a great one. Yeah. And think about why that's mindful. You have to pay immediate attention, right, to what's happening right now, or you burn the food up, right? So it's whatever brings you to the present moment. Good. How about other people? What do you use for mindfulness?
I crochet now because it has something to do with my hands because I was a smoker.
Oh, yes.
So every time I feel like picking up a cigarette, I pick up the crochet needle.
That is brilliant.
Even if I don't do anything, I just pick it up and put it in there and just
Yep.
look at it.
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about other people? What do you do? And if you don't do something, what might you do? What do you think? What can help you be really present in the moment?
Gardening,
Gardening can be a good one. Yes, out in nature.
fishing.
Fishing, right. Anything like that you enjoy, right, that keeps you focused on the here and now, right, is what you want to do. So a basic, what we call insight meditation, is really very simple. It's not a complicated thing. What we do is we observe the breath, sounds, thoughts, emotions, and body sensations, those 5 things, without trying to change any of it or do anything with it, just being present to those experiences. Okay? Ready to practice? Feel free to close your eyes if you like. You don't have to, but do that. And if you could, be sure everything's uncrossed. If you could sit flat as best you can. So if you close your eyes for a moment, if it's comfortable, there's the bells. So we begin the meditation by doing something called taking our seat, which simply means to be present, to be here. Right? And we begin the practice by focusing on the breath, not trying to breathe any differently than usual, just noticing the in-breath and the out-breath. One thing we're always doing that we don't have to make happen is breathe. We're always breathing. And notice that there's an in-breath, and that ends. Then there's an out-breath. Just breathing in naturally, effortlessly, and breathing out. And just breathing helps us to become mindful of our experience. And as you continue to breathe naturally and effortlessly, bring your attention to sounds that you hear in the room, whatever they are. It might be the air conditioner, the bells, me talking, movement. Just notice sounds and see if you can identify sounds coming and going or changing. Just pay close attention to sounds. And as you continue to be aware of breathing in and breathing out, bring your attention now to thoughts. Just noticing thoughts beginning and ending, coming and going. It doesn't really matter what the thoughts are about. Notice how many there are, just coming and going, beginning and ending. There's nothing to do with them but to notice all kind of thoughts about the past, the present, the future. And as you continue to be aware of the breathing in and the breathing out, bring your attention now to emotions arising. Just like thoughts, emotion beginning and ending, coming and going. Doesn't really matter what the emotion is, just noticing emotion, coming and going. And as you continue to be aware of the breathing in and the breathing out, bringing your attention now to physical sensations in the body, without labeling the sensation as pleasant or unpleasant, simply noticing sensations beginning and ending, coming and going. Notice the experience of change. All things are changing. There's no need to hold on to one thing or another. Just allow yourself to see things coming and going, beginning and ending. Nothing to do or change or hold on to. Just allowing your experience to come and go, begin and end. You might even feel yourself kind of floating in your experience. Just allowing it to be whatever it is. And as you continue to breathe naturally and effortlessly, just focus on the breath until you hear the sound of 3 gongs ending the meditation. Take a moment. And again, there wasn't a right or wrong experience to have. There wasn't something you were supposed to experience. The question is, what was your experience, right? And that was a very brief meditation, but can you share whatever your experience was? Anybody want to tell us?
Relaxation.
Relaxation. You really can significantly affect your physical condition, right? Imagine again doing that for 20 minutes and you have done that for 6 months, how you'd feel, right? So you can do that. You can do those things, right? And it's free. It doesn't cost anything. That's even better, right?